Okay, this PE paragraph is all about the structure of your PE paragraphs for an Animal Farm question. I have started with the structure of the whole response in terms of your whole essay, just to show you where the PE paragraphs fit in. So here we have our umbrella planning. So we have our overall idea that answers the question. Then we have our 3 points that become PE paragraphs that fit in underneath the overall idea that answer the question. So essentially, again, we've looked at this in the previous video. I have my overall idea that Old Major inspires the rebellion, and this is 3 ways that he does that. Essentially, the overall structure will look like of your essay something like this: introduction paragraph, 3 PE paragraphs. This video is all about, now we know the overall structure, how do I write my PE paragraph or my analysis? So the first thing that I need is my point sentence. I take this from the plan. I talked about unity and equality in my plan, and there is my point sentence. There's no quotations here, it's just my idea. His speech is based on equality. What I've got next is a piece of evidence. Now here is my piece of evidence. It's not a quotation, it's textual reference. Now, what does that mean? Well, let's remember, in this exam, you are not given the book, so you need to learn the quotations. But you don't just get marked for quotations, you also get marks for referring to the text. Now we need to be careful with this. When I say textual reference, I still mean evidence. I don't mean you telling me the story again. That is narrative. You'll get very low marks for that. I mean referring to a specific point or idea or character in the text, then explaining it. When I have a look at this, here is my textual reference. He stands on the platform. The rest of this is my explanation with some context thrown in there. So I want us to be clear, when I say textual reference, I don't mean telling me the story again. I still mean evidence. The next one's a little bit easier to explain. The evidence here is a quote. I've remembered a quote. I've introduced it by going the quote, then my quotation, and then my explanation type word, which you would have looked at in the previous video about embedded quotations. I've then continued it in terms of my explanation. I've also continued it in terms of a keyword. Now, I can't take out a keyword from here because there's only one word, but I can explain it in another way. Okay, the word also has connotations of. I've extended it with a connective suggesting here, a verb in the ing form, and I've tried to develop my explanation not just in one sentence, but a second sentence. I'm now moving on to my next piece of evidence. That could be a quote, that could be a textual reference. I've used a connective also to do that. Okay, so here I have picked out quotations. I've remembered that he uses us, our. This isn't a full quotation, I suppose, but I remembered that in the lesson, Sir was on about how he used us, our, we to reinforce unity here. So I've remembered that, I've included it in quotations. I've then extended it here with a further explanation, hinting at context. I've then connected it to my 4th piece of evidence here, and I've used a connective here furthermore because it's the same. If it was different, I might use however or in contrast, but my explanation here is going to be the same in the sense of I'm not saying something different. Right, I've included quite a bit there. Here is my final explanation. My textual reference is his song. Okay, there it is, my textual reference. And I've explained it using context, I've explained what it means. Now, textual reference versus quotation. A PE paragraph is easier if you just focus on quotes. However, that's going to be difficult without the exam, and you have to revise and you have to learn those quotes. The other way to make it easier is you are allowed to use textual reference. That's not telling the story again, that's being very specific about a certain point, character, idea from the novel and writing it. Here is my textual reference and quotation. So the quotation's pretty obvious to see because I remember quotes, they've got quotation marks around them. They're easiest to structure, I think. They're easier to introduce. They're easier to have the explanation type word because we use embedded quotations. The textual reference is a little bit more difficult, but you get marks for it. It will be easier, I imagine, for you to do than remembering quotations, although I still want quotes. When we look at it again, the green here is explanation, it's analysis. Okay, I'm not telling the story again, I'm constantly explaining what those quotes mean. This is very important. The more green you have, the more analysis you have, the higher your mark will be. It's about developing it with keywords, developing it within additional sentences, developing it with connectives, developing it with context. And that's the last thing I've underlined here, the context. You need it. And if you have a look at the way I've structured it, a lot of times it's just about at the end of an explanation, comma, just like, similar to, which is like, which is a reference to. So it's not about adding in separate sentences necessarily. It's just about going, once you've explained what happens in Animal Farm, Old Major gives a speech, comma, which is like Lennon did. That is how we can get context in there. This is not easy to do in the sense of writing a paragraph like this. It will take practice, but again, with the work we do in lesson, with this video for revision, it should be able to help you.